the general principles then of what we're going to do is basically how we're landing on our foot going along the bed of the treadmill, and what that's going to feel like in terms of for people wearing trainers who already have like a bit of heel lift or some mid-arch support, the differences, but also how you're going to effectively manage your speed and your gait based on what's going on with your feet and your position of either being upright or leaning forwards. So the classic issue for most people is this idea of either overstriding, which means we're heel striking, so we're taking big steps, landing on the back of our heel, or we're just landing on our heel anyway, regardless of whether we're overstriding or not. Yeah? So the first thing is your cadence, so that's how fast you're moving your feet, not how far you're going with those feet. So the easiest way to get into this and to feel it is to basically, if you're doing it on a treadmill, you're going to just speed it up until you can't walk anymore. If you're doing it not on a treadmill, you're basically just going to lean forward until you feel like you have to go and take a step. And that's essentially where we want to be with our position of our chest. So we're leaning forwards, and that's actually driving us forwards. So a lot of people will run, but like really upright, and they're actually slowing themselves down. So I'll just show you what that looks like on here. Nice thing about treadmills is you can really hear if you're like, this is heel striking, this is me walking my front feet. And that's not me exaggerating, this is just what it sounds like, because like you're putting so much more force through your heel than you are if you're just on the toes. We don't have to go into an entirely front foot running position, but we do want to find a better balance because most people are running really on their heels, not on their toes. Okay, so this for me is a good pace, so I'm having to keep going. This is where we talk about cadence. So at the moment my cadence is like this, but I could, without going any faster, because the treadmill's not going any faster, so now I've kind of almost doubled my cadence, but I'm still going the same speed. Now the difference is, you can hear it again in the sound of the treadmill. Thump, 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 to taking small steps, thump, thump, thump. A lot lighter, like really can't barely hear it now. That's also because I'm starting to come towards my toes, but even if I still try and get on my heels, it's really hard because my feet are right underneath me. So this is where overstriding is where we start to really heel strike. All that pressure, all that is shooting up towards your knees, towards your hips, and basically the rest of your body is having to deal with that load that we don't need. Our calves are like the biggest supporter of all the force that comes through while we're running and walking. That's what they're designed for. They're basically our springs. And so that's why we want to come towards the front of our feet so that the calves are picking up all that work, not our knees, hips, the rest of the body. Yeah? Cool. So the first thing is just to pull in the cadence. So there is a general rule of thumb around 120 beats per minute. I don't really worry about it too much, but the idea is we want to make sure we're at a shorter cadence so that our feet are kind of underneath us. We're not kind of stepping out into these big lunges. Yeah? Lovely. So we're going to speed it up a little bit, and then we're going to talk about how we're adjusting our speed and also how we stay with that kind of slightly front foot forward. Okay, so at the moment, this is my kind of natural cadence. I haven't like done it to a metronome for a while, so I don't know if this is roughly on that kind of speed, but for me it feels good and it feels nice. Now what we're going to talk about is this position of our leaning forward or leaning down. So for most people we're quite upright, and what we're doing is essentially braking, we're slowing ourselves down because we want gravity to pull us. So you can see I'm starting to come away from the machine. All I have to do is lean my shoulders forward, and now I'm having to catch up with my feet. So we want to find this nice middle ground where we're using gravity to draw us forward. And that means we're using way less effort anyway, so we're much more efficient at doing our running. But it also means we're shifting our weight from being on our heels to being more onto our toes as we lean forwards. Yeah? That's pretty much it. So really I'll probably break it down into three things. One is increase your cadence, because that's going to really help keep our feet underneath us. The second is to lean forwards so that we are coming towards our toes. And then the third is just just being aware of those two as a feeling. And we want it to be towards the front of the foot so that we're kind of springy rather than kind of catching up with ourselves. That's pretty much it. In terms of like as we get faster as well, you start to notice it more and more in terms of how fast you can run. So if I bring this up to about 12, which is me coming towards like a sprinty pace, I could do this, but it's like really hard work, or I could just, now I'm just like running like normal. But the interesting thing is this kind of pace, that kind of speed, I'll slow it down. I haven't changed anything, but I've just traveled at two completely different speeds. But in terms of impact under my feet, nothing's changed at all. And that's the biggest thing really, in terms of protecting all your joints, because we don't want to be going into this like, oh, I've got to like get across this thing, or you're just trying to keep it light and keep it comfortable. The most important thing right now is just finding that position that just doesn't feel too like too wearing on the joints, and then and then you can look into the rest. Now, one thing about doing it barefoot, like as a representation, is that you don't have your shoes obviously are forcing you slightly into either pronation, supination, giving you support in your arch. That's all fine. That's not a problem at all. But we should be able to run without shoes on. If you tried to run and you were slamming your heels all the time, it would be really painful if you weren't wearing shoes. And so this is where like it just to be able to visualize this idea that actually we want to come towards the front, because most people would look at like barefoot running and think, oh, how can you barefoot run? But also it's like, because I'm not probably running like most people run when they're wearing trainers, so you're having to adapt it. Now, I'm not going to encourage you to go and like take your trainers off and go run barefoot, but it does really help to just visually see that that's the reason we need to do this stuff, and the shoes are there just as like a bit of extra protection, whereas we've kind of gone the other way at the moment, where shoes are giving us so much protection, we've become unaware of what our feet are doing and what implications that has up the chain of our body, and so we need to just regain some of that. So just learning that technique in shoes will really help.